The fleet moved through the cold darkness of space. 100 ships drifted silently between stars, engines humming like distant thunder. Inside the lead ship, the crew spoke in quiet tones. No one joked. No one smiled. Everyone knew what was coming. The war had dragged on for years. Humanity had tried peace, sent envoys, signed fragile treaties. But nothing stopped the attacks. Colonies burned, supply routes were cut, and millions had vanished. The Alien Coalition, a group of warlords who saw humans as weak newcomers, had crossed one line too many. When they destroyed the colony at Kepler 9, Earth stopped talking and started preparing. Now, months later, the full human fleet was on its way to the combat zone. Their orders were simple: end the threat before it reached Earth itself. On the bridge of the command ship, screens glowed soft blue. Officers studied the data feeds, reading the quiet messages flowing between ships. Every pilot, gunner, and engineer felt the same weight on their chest. They had been trained for this moment, but training could not prepare anyone for real war. The commander stood near the front window, watching the stars slide past. The galaxy looked peaceful, almost innocent, as if it didn't know what was about to happen. The crew around him worked in silence, checking coordinates, running energy diagnostics, reviewing weapon systems. Each one had someone back home who was counting on them to survive. A young communication officer turned from her console. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Fleet alignment complete. All ships are in formation. The commander gave a quiet nod. Good, keep the signal silent. No transmissions unless necessary. It wasn't fear that filled the ship, it was focus. Everyone knew the enemy was waiting. Somewhere ahead, beyond the dark clouds of the Arkan Belt, alien sensors were watching. If the humans were detected too early, they would lose the element of surprise. The fleet moved at low power, invisible to most scanners. Each ship kept exact distance from the next, as if guided by instinct. Outside, stars drifted by like silent witnesses. The calm before the storm was almost too perfect. In the sleeping quarters, some crew members sat together in silence. A few stared at small holograms of their families. Children laughing, parents smiling, partners waving. Others sat alone, checking their weapons or adjusting their uniforms. Everyone had a different way of preparing for what was coming. One engineer whispered to another, "You think we'll make it back?" The other gave a faint smile. "We've come too far not to." They both went quiet again. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Some talked about home, others about duty. But deep down, they all shared the same thought. If this battle was lost, Earth might not get another chance. A soft alarm blinked across the bridge of the command ship. "Entering outer combat range," the navigation officer said. The commander straightened. "Reduce speed. Keep stealth systems active." Through the observation glass, faint glimmers appeared ahead, tiny flashes like distant lightning. The enemy's patrols were out there, moving in the shadows. "Any transmissions from them?" the commander asked. "None," the officer replied. "They don't know we're here yet." The commander leaned forward slightly. "Let's keep it that way." Every ship in the fleet adjusted course, moving into a precise wedge formation. It was a maneuver that had taken years to perfect, each ship overlapping the other's defense systems, creating a single wall of energy and armor. No other species fought like humans. Most alien fleets relied on numbers or brute power. Humans relied on coordination, patience, and the belief that every ship mattered. Hours passed like slow-moving stars. The silence became heavier. Then the radar flared. "Multiple signatures ahead," the sensor officer said quickly. "Thousands of them." "It's the enemy fleet." The commander's expression didn't change. "How far?" 3 million kilometers enclosing. "They're hiding in the asteroid field." The commander nodded. "They're waiting for us to come to them." A quiet tension filled the air. No one moved. The hum of the engine seemed louder than ever. The fleet's computers confirmed what everyone already knew. If the humans moved forward, the enemy would strike. But if they waited too long, the enemy might flank them and trap them between the asteroids. "Prepare all ships for combat status," the commander said calmly. "Power up weapons, but keep the safeties on. I want every gun ready to fire, but no one pulls the trigger until my order." Crew members moved with silent precision. Across the fleet, massive cannons rotated into position. Railguns loaded. Missile tubes opened. Fighter pilots climbed into their small cockpits, checking every system twice. In hangars, engineers hurried between glowing engines, sealing hatches and tightening panels. For a brief moment, It looked like time had stopped. Then the enemy made the first move. From the far side of the asteroid field, flashes of light appeared, plasma shots cutting across the void. The alien fleet had seen them after all. Impact warning, a voice shouted. Explosions lit up the darkness. Energy waves rolled across the shields of the forward ships. But they held. The armor glowed red hot for a second, then cooled. Return fire? An officer asked. Not yet, the commander said. Let them come closer. Every eye watched the screen as the enemy moved forward. The alien ships were massive, glowing with strange green energy. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Living machines shaped like blades, moving with impossible speed. The human fleet held position. The commander waited, calm and still. He had seen too many battles to waste ammunition early. When the first alien ship came into range, the commander finally spoke. Now, the order echoed through every channel. Dozens of railguns fired in perfect unison. The sound inside the ships was deep and heavy, like thunder in a storm. Bright streaks of metal tore through the darkness, striking enemy ships with pinpoint accuracy. The first wave of alien vessels shattered instantly. Pieces of metal and fire scattered into the void. Direct hits confirmed, someone called out. The commander stayed silent, watching. The second wave of human fire followed, then the third. Every shot found its mark. The enemy, realizing too late what they were facing, tried to spread out. But the humans had already predicted the move. The fleet shifted formation like a living creature, adjusting angles, covering every escape route. In the fighter hangars, squadrons of small human ships launched from the carriers. Their engines glowed blue as they darted between larger vessels, weaving through debris, striking enemy flanks. Each pilot knew the risk. Space battles were not forgiving, but not one of them hesitated. Inside one of the smaller carriers, a young pilot took a deep breath before launching. She had never seen real combat before today. Her hands shook slightly, but as her fighter shot into open space, all fear vanished. Training took over. Her voice was steady as she called out targets, diving straight into the heart of the battle. The commander watched the readings. Maintain formation. Cover our bombers. No lone heroics. Understood, came the replies. In minutes, the first enemy line had collapsed. Their coordination broke down. Their return fire became wild and scattered. The human fleet advanced slowly, carefully, never giving up position. Every move had purpose. Every shot counted. The commander gave another order. Bring in the support ships. Focus all fire on their command carrier. The main enemy ship tried to retreat, but it was too late. Railgun shells and missiles ripped through its shields, tearing through its hull. For a second it glowed brighter than the stars, then vanished in a burst of light. The shockwave rippled through the field. Even the asteroids shook. On the bridge, the crew could feel the vibration through the floor. No one cheered. They only watched. The commander finally spoke again. Hold position. Prepare for counterattack, but none came. The enemy had gone silent. The battle, at least for now, was over. Across the fleet, exhausted soldiers leaned back in their chairs. Engineers checked systems for damage. Pilots landed their fighters, shaking from adrenaline. The communication officer looked up. Enemy transmissions have stopped. They're retreating. The commander didn't smile. He simply said, good, let them run. They'll know what happens when humanity fights back. Outside, the wreckage of the enemy fleet floated like dark stars against the endless night. The humans had entered the combat zone with discipline and focus, and in less than an hour, they had changed the course of the war. For now, space was quiet again. But everyone knew this was only the beginning. The real fight was still ahead, and the humans would be ready. The battlefield was quiet now. Only drifting metal, broken fragments, and faint trails of light filled the space where the two fleets had clashed. The human fleet stayed in tight formation, shields glowing softly as energy systems cooled. Inside every ship, people were breathing again. The worst was over, or so they thought. The commander stood near the main window, staring at the debris field. He didn't feel victory, only a heavy silence that came after destruction. The crew around him moved slowly, voices low, faces pale under the glow of the consoles. Damage report, he said quietly. A young officer responded. 3 ships with heavy damage. 1 carrier lost 2 wings of fighters. Casualties still being counted. The commander nodded once. Begin rescue operations. Get everyone you can. Small shuttles launched from the carriers, gliding through the wreckage to search for survivors. In the darkness of space, their lights looked like fireflies drifting over a field of metal. Each pilot knew that any mistake could mean collision or worse, but no one hesitated. Humanity never left its people behind. Inside one of the damaged destroyers, the corridors were filled with smoke and sparks. Engineers worked with handheld lights, sealing ruptures and carrying injured crew members toward the medical bays. The air smelled of burnt circuits and ozone, yet even in that chaos there was order. Every person knew their role. A medic knelt beside a wounded gunner and pressed a patch over a deep cut. "Hold still," she said softly. "You're going home." "You'll be fine." The gunner managed a weak smile. "Did we win?" She nodded. "We did." He closed his eyes and let out a shaky breath. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to rest. Back on the command ship, the main screen showed live feeds from across the fleet. Ships were being repaired. Crews were clearing debris. Communications were busy but controlled. Humanity had just faced one of its largest battles and survived. But deep space was never still for long. A sudden alert flashed across the tactical board. The radar officer's eyes widened. New readings. Multiple energy signatures detected. "They're moving fast." The room froze for a second. "Are they ours?" the commander asked. "No," the officer said, voice tight. "Unknown pattern. Different from the last group." The commander leaned forward. "Show me." The display shifted, revealing hundreds of new contacts entering the system. The enemy had called for reinforcements. This time the fleet was bigger, stronger, and angrier. "Everyone to battle stations," the commander ordered. "We're not finished yet." The calm that had settled across the fleet vanished in an instant. Sirens rang out softly through the decks. Soldiers ran to their positions. Engineers sealed bulkheads and pilots climbed back into their fighters. The ship's engines roared to full power again. Inside the hangars, the air was thick with motion. Mechanics shouted instructions. Fueling drones moved between fighters, and crew members loaded ammunition into weapon pods. The pilots looked tired but determined. There was no time to rest. One pilot closed her eyes for a moment before taking her seat. Her hands shook, but she whispered to herself, "For home. For everyone." Then she launched into the black sky once more. The enemy fleet appeared like a wave of burning stars. Their ships glowed with red energy, engines flaring as they spread into formation. They had learned from their earlier mistake. They would not rush in this time. They wanted revenge. The commander watched their approach. "They're smarter now," he said. "They're trying to draw us out." "Should we fall back?" the tactical officer asked. "No. If we retreat, they'll follow us to the colonies. We hold the line here." The human fleet spread out again, taking up defensive positions near the wreckage of the first battle. The destroyed ships would act as cover. Every weapon was ready. Every shield was raised. For several minutes, neither side fired. It was a test of nerves. Both fleets floated in silence, engines burning faintly, waiting for the other to make the first move. Then a single alien ship fired a massive plasma beam, cutting through the darkness. The blast hit one of the human destroyers, tearing through its side. The explosion lit up the void like sunrise. The commander's voice was calm. "All ships return fire." The battle exploded into motion. Missiles streaked across space. Railguns thundered. Fighters weaved through glowing trails of energy. The void turned into a storm of light and sound. On board the carriers, officers shouted orders. "Fighter wings 2 and 3, cover the left flank. Battleships, focus fire on their command ships. Don't let them regroup." The human fleet moved like a single machine. Every ship covered another. Every pilot trusted the one beside them. Years of training, experience, and discipline came together in perfect rhythm. Still, the enemy was fierce. Their ships were larger and more advanced. Energy blasts struck hard, shaking entire decks. Several human ships went dark. But even as they fell, the rest of the fleet closed the gaps, keeping formation tight. Inside one of the battleships, a gunner wiped sweat from his forehead and shouted over the noise. "We're overheating." The engineer beside him adjusted controls. "Hold it together. Just a few more minutes." They fired again, sending a railgun slug through an enemy cruiser. The alien ship split apart, its fragments spinning away. Cheers filled the deck, but no one stopped working. The commander's voice echoed through the communication lines. "Focus fire on their center. If we break their line, they'll scatter." The fleet obeyed. All forward guns turned toward the middle of the enemy formation. The sky flared with dozens of coordinated blasts. In moments, the alien fleet's center collapsed. Their formation broke and confusion spread through their ranks. "Now," the commander shouted. "Advance." Human ships surged forward. Fighters dove through the gaps, firing missiles into unprotected hulls. Destroyers unleashed volleys of kinetic rounds. The enemy tried to retreat, but human interceptors were faster, cutting off their escape. The battle became chaos. Every second counted. Explosions filled the void, lighting up faces across control rooms. People shouted, sweated, and fought with everything they had. A young officer on the bridge stared at his screen, voice trembling. "They're falling apart, sir. Their flagship is losing power." The commander gave the final order. "End this." The fleet concentrated all firepower on the enemy flagship. Dozens of impacts struck at once. The alien ship's shields shattered. A final explosion lit the darkness brighter than any star. The enemy fleet broke completely. Some ships tried to flee, but the humans didn't chase. They had made their point. The commander's voice returned to calm. "Cease fire. Let them run. We hold this ground." Gradually, the guns fell silent. Only the soft hum of engines remained. The battle was over again, but this time the victory was absolute. On the decks of every ship, people cheered, hugged, or simply sat down where they stood, too exhausted to move. Many cried quietly, not from fear, but from relief. The commander looked at the stars, his face unreadable. "Send word to Earth," he said softly. "Tell them the combat zone is secure." The communication officer nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, sir." Messages began flowing back home. Across the fleet, screens lit up with replies, families, leaders, and soldiers all hearing the same words. Humanity had stood its ground and won. In the days that followed, rescue ships worked through the wreckage again, bringing back survivors from both sides. The humans treated wounded enemies too. Even in victory, they showed mercy. That was what made them different. A quiet respect grew among the crew. They had faced impossible odds and survived twice. Every person had done their part, from the pilots and the fighters to the engineers deep inside the engines. As the fleet began repairs, the commander finally allowed himself to breathe. He walked through the corridors, greeting his people, offering a few words of thanks to those who had fought so bravely. He didn't see soldiers, he saw families, ordinary humans who had done extraordinary things. Outside, the stars looked peaceful again. The wreckage drifted slowly, fading into the distance. Humanity had defended its home, its pride, and its future, but everyone knew this peace might not last forever. Somewhere out there, others were watching, learning, and waiting, still, for now. The human fleet had proved something powerful, that unity, courage, and discipline could overcome any threat. And when the next challenge came, they would be ready once more. The commander looked out into the vast black of space, the faint blue light of Earth glowing far behind them. "We're not just fighting to survive," he murmured quietly. "We're fighting to protect everything we love." No one answered, but he didn't need one. The silence of the stars was enough. Humanity had spoken through action, and the message was clear. When they entered the combat zone, the enemy's destruction was immediate. Days passed after the battle, but the silence in space still carried the echoes of war. The human fleet floated near the wreckage, slowly repairing ships and helping the wounded. What had once been a combat zone was now a graveyard of steel and memories. Every drifting piece of metal told a story of someone who had fought and fallen. Inside the command ship, the lights were dimmed. The crew worked quietly, their movements slower now. Fatigue hung heavy in the air. After 2 battles in a row, everyone felt the weight of survival. The commander sat at the center console, reading reports one after another. Hull fractures, energy drain, medical shortages, it was endless. Yet no one complained. They all knew how close they had come to losing everything. A message came from one of the outer patrol ships. "Unidentified signal detected beyond the asteroid field," the voice said through static. The commander looked up immediately. "Origin? Unknown. It doesn't match enemy code. Could be a distress signal." The room went silent again. Everyone knew what that could mean. In war, distress signals were dangerous. They could be traps. But humanity never ignored a call for help. "Patch it through," the commander ordered. The signal played over the speakers. It was weak and broken, but the message was clear. "This is Colony Transport Alpha 7. Attacked. Engines failing. Need assistance." The commander thought for a moment. Prepare a rescue team. Send 2 frigates and 1 escort carrier.
Keep shields up.
If it's a trap, I want them ready. The fleet shifted formation slightly as the smaller ships moved out. Engines glowed blue as they disappeared into the darkness. Hours passed. Everyone waited for the report. Then a voice came back through the radio. "We've found them." The signal was real. Survivors on board, around 200 people. A wave of relief moved across the bridge. After all the destruction, saving lives felt like a small piece of hope. But that hope didn't last long. The next words froze everyone in place. "Commander, we found something else. Wreckage nearby. It's not alien, it's human. Looks like an early scout ship." The commander frowned. "A scout ship? From which fleet?" "Unknown, sir." "The ID tags are burned out. But the damage is strange, clean cuts, not explosions. Like someone tested weapons on it." The commander stood slowly. "Bring back everything you can. We'll analyze it here." When the scout ship fragments arrived, the technicians began scanning immediately. What they found made the entire command crew uneasy. The weapon marks didn't match the enemy's plasma or railgun fire. They were something different, something human. "Are you saying another human group did this?" one officer asked. The technician hesitated. "The readings match our own weapon signatures, but the energy levels are higher." "Much higher." The commander looked down at the damaged metal, silent for a long time. "So someone is developing new weapons, and they tested them on our own." The idea spread quickly through the fleet. Could it be a rogue group, a private faction, or something more? No one knew, but everyone could feel it. There was something bigger happening beyond the battlefield. Still, there was no time to dwell. The survivors from the colony transport were brought aboard. They were pale, shaken, and thin from days without food. Doctors and medics worked tirelessly to stabilize them. Among the rescued was a small group of technicians who claimed they had seen the weapon tests firsthand before being attacked. They said the weapons didn't belong to the alien warlords. They belonged to humans who had broken away from the main alliance. They called themselves the Frontier Division. One survivor whispered to the commander. "They said they'd protect humanity by any means. But they attacked us when we refused to join them." The commander's jaw tightened. Humanity had fought so hard to unite, and now it was splitting again. "Thank you," he told the survivor quietly. "You're safe now." Later that night, he stood alone at the observation window. The stars outside were beautiful, but they felt colder than ever. Every war had enemies, but fighting your own kind was something different. It broke something deep inside. The next day, a council call came through from Earth Command. The commander appeared on the communication screen, saluting as the high-ranking officers from Earth appeared. Their faces were tired, serious, and shadowed by worry. "You've done well, Commander," one of them said. "The fleet's defense has held the line. But we have new information. The Frontier Division is real. They've taken control of several research stations on the outer rim. They claim the Central Command has become weak." The commander replied, "If that's true, they'll try to use our victories to fuel their cause." "Exactly," the officer said. "We can't allow that. Your next mission is to investigate and, if necessary, neutralize them. But be careful, they're humans. Some of them may even be people who once served under you." The connection ended, leaving the bridge silent once more. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Fighting aliens was one thing. Fighting other humans was another. The commander gathered his officers. "Listen carefully. Our orders have changed. We're not heading home yet. We're going after a new threat, one that wears the same uniform we do." No one spoke, but everyone understood. Loyalty would be tested again. The fleet set a new course toward the outer rim, engines flaring as they cut through the emptiness. The stars ahead seemed distant and cold, as if warning them to turn back. Days passed in quiet preparation. Crews ran drills, pilots checked their ships, and engineers recharged the railgun cores. But underneath all of it, there was a quiet unease. No one liked the idea of pointing weapons at their own species. During a quiet hour, 2 soldiers sat near a viewport talking in low voices. "Do you think this frontier group really wants to protect humans?" one asked. "Maybe," the other said softly. "But protecting doesn't mean destroying your own. Once you cross that line, you're no different from the enemy." The first soldier nodded. "Still, it's sad. We're out here fighting aliens to save each other, and now we have to fight ourselves too." That was the feeling spreading across the fleet, a mix of duty, confusion, and sadness. But duty always came first. Humanity couldn't afford another divide. When the fleet finally reached the coordinates of the captured research station, they saw no movement at first. The massive structure floated in orbit around a dying planet, its surface scarred by battle. Then faint lights flickered across its hull. "They know we're here," the sensor officer said. "Open a channel," the commander ordered. Static filled the air. Then a calm voice answered. "This is Commander of the Frontier Division." "We've been expecting you," the commander replied firmly. "You've taken control of an Earth facility. Stand down and return the research data immediately." The voice on the other end chuckled softly. "You still think Earth can protect everyone? We're doing what must be done. Humanity needs strength, not hesitation." "Strength without unity is chaos," the commander said. "You're risking everything we fought for." "Maybe," the voice replied. "But maybe that's the price of survival." Then the channel went dead. Moments later, defense guns on the station powered up. Blue energy flared across its surface. "They've locked onto us," someone shouted. The commander didn't hesitate. "All ships prepare to engage. Disable their weapons, but do not destroy the station. We're bringing them in alive if possible." The human fleet moved into combat formation again, engines roaring as they charged forward. Beams of energy shot from the station, lighting up the void. Human shields glowed bright, holding steady under the impact. "Return fire, aim for the turrets," the commander ordered. Precision shots struck the weapon systems one by one. Explosions lit the station's surface. Fighters swarmed around it, dodging automated defenses, firing short bursts to disable power nodes. Inside the station, alarms blared as systems went offline. The Frontier Division realized they were outmatched. After hours of intense fighting, the station finally went dark. The human fleet surrounded it, weapons aimed but silent. A communication came through again, weaker this time. "We surrender." "Don't fire," the commander gave a quiet nod. "Stand down all weapons. Send boarding teams." As the boarding shuttles approached, the commander felt both relief and sorrow. The war with the aliens had proven humanity's strength. But this battle, with their own, proved something deeper. Strength meant nothing without unity. The captured officers of the Frontier Division were brought aboard. They looked tired, angry, and lost. Some refused to speak, others simply stared in silence. The commander looked at them and said quietly, "You could have been our allies. You still can be. The galaxy is dangerous enough, we don't need to fight each other." None of them replied. That night, as the stars drifted slowly outside, the commander walked the empty corridors of his ship. Every victory seemed to come with a new burden. Every mission brought a harder choice. Yet through it all, humanity still stood together, bruised but unbroken. In the dark silence of space, the fleet moved once more. The war was far from over, but so was humanity's resolve. They would face every threat, alien or human, and they would endure. Because when humanity entered the combat zone, they never backed down. The captured station floated silently in orbit, its lights dimmed, its defenses disabled. The human fleet stayed close, scanning for any hidden traps. For the first time in weeks, there was no sound of gunfire, no explosion lighting up the dark, only silence. Inside the command ship, the air felt heavy. Everyone moved slowly, tired from long battles and endless hours of tension. The faces of the crew showed pride but also confusion. They had defeated the Frontier Division, but it didn't feel like a victory. Fighting their own kind had left a mark that no medal could heal. The commander walked through the corridors, passing engineers, medics, and officers who nodded respectfully as he went by. He could see it in their eyes, the same question that haunted him. How many more battles before peace? In the medical bay, the captured members of the Frontier Division were being treated for injuries. Some refused food, some stayed silent, but a few were starting to talk. They spoke about what drove them to rebel, about their fear that Earth Command had grown too slow to protect outer colonies. They believed they were saving humanity, one medic said quietly to the commander, but fear made them blind. The commander looked through the glass wall at the prisoners. Fear always does. Later, in the strategy room, the senior officers gathered. A large map of the nearby systems hovered above the table. Red dots marked known enemy locations, but new signals had begun appearing across the rim. The alien coalition was not gone. They were regrouping. "The aliens are rebuilding faster than we expected," one officer said. "Our scouts report that 3 warlord fleets have joined together. If they attack again, they'll strike with full force." The commander studied the data. "Then we need to strike first. We can't let them recover. Another officer hesitated. Sir, our fleet is still damaged. Many ships need repairs. The crew is exhausted. If we push too hard now, I know, the commander interrupted softly. But if we wait, we lose everything we fought for. The galaxy won't give us time to rest. There was silence for a moment, then quiet agreement. They all knew he was right. Orders were sent out across the fleet. Repair crews worked double shifts. Mechanics replaced burned-out engines and sealed armor plating. Pilots rechecked every weapon and navigation system. Even the cooks worked nonstop, preparing meals for tired soldiers who barely had time to eat. Everyone did their part. Outside, the stars remained still, but the humans were moving again. The fleet slowly came back to full strength, one ship at a time. During the nights, when the hum of machinery echoed through the halls, the commander often found himself in the observation deck. He would stand there alone, watching the endless dark. He thought about Earth, the oceans, the mountains, the people who didn't even know how close they had come to losing it all. He also thought about the frontier division, how easily fear could twist hope into something dangerous. Humanity was strong, but fragile too. That was the truth of it. A soft sound interrupted his thoughts. It was one of the younger officers holding a tablet. Sir, the engineers finished the new long-range sensors. They can track movements even beyond the outer colonies now. The commander turned to him and nodded. Good work. Every small improvement matters. Tell them I said thank you. The young officer smiled faintly and left. For a moment, the commander just stood there again, looking out into the stars. Somewhere beyond that darkness, another war was already waiting to begin. 2 days later, the warning came. Enemy movement detected, the radar officer reported. Large formation heading toward the Andros Gate, estimated 3 times our size. The command room fell silent. The Andros Gate wasn't just a strategic point. It was a wormhole that connected human space to half the outer colonies. If the enemy took it, billions would be trapped. How long until they reached the gate? The commander asked. Less than 20 hours, sir. He didn't hesitate. Prepare the fleet. We intercept them before they get there. The engines roared to life once more. The fleet turned toward the coordinates, leaving behind the captured station and heading straight into danger again. The stars outside blurred into lines as they jumped through the void. Inside the ships, the mood was different this time. There was no fear, only determination. The crews had been through too much to feel afraid anymore. They had learned something important. The moment they stood together, nothing could break them. In the hangars, pilots checked their fighters, laughing quietly to ease the tension. In the control rooms, engineers talked about their families back home, promising to see them again. Every person carried hope like a hidden weapon. As the fleet approached the combat zone, scanners picked up the enemy formation. The alien fleet was massive, hundreds of ships in tight formation glowing red and gold against the dark. The commander stood at the center of the bridge. This is it. This is where we make our stand. The communication lines opened across the fleet. His voice went out to every ship. This isn't just another battle. This is about everything we've lost and everything we still have. Every planet, every colony, every child waiting for us back home, they're counting on us. We fight not for conquest, but for survival. Remember that. We fight as one. When he finished, the silence was powerful. Then one by one, voices began answering. For Earth. For the fleet. For humanity. The alien fleet began moving forward. The stars filled with the light of their engines. The human fleet adjusted formation, shields humming as power surged through their cores. Enemy in range, the radar officer said quietly. The commander's eyes narrowed. All ships, hold your fire until I give the signal. The aliens opened fire first, just as expected. Streams of energy raced across the black sky, exploding against human shields. The fleet rocked from the impact but held firm. Shields at 60%, someone called out. Hold steady, the commander replied. We're not breaking. Seconds felt like hours. The alien fire kept coming, brighter and heavier. But then when they came close enough, the commander gave the order that everyone had been waiting for. Now. The human fleet unleashed everything at once. Railguns fired in unison. Missiles streaked through the void and fighters dove into the chaos with fearless precision. The darkness lit up like a storm. The first wave of alien ships shattered under the assault. The second tried to flank, but the humans were ready. They had studied every enemy tactic, every move. The fleet adjusted instantly, cutting off the attack and striking back harder. From the carrier decks, bombers launched their payloads straight into the enemy command line. Explosions rippled across their formation, breaking them apart. The commander watched the screens as the alien fleet began to crumble. "Don't stop," he said quietly. "End it." For hours, the battle raged. Space was filled with fire and smoke, but the humans never lost focus. They moved with the precision of one heartbeat, each ship covering the others, each pilot trusting their wingman completely. Then, finally, the enemy broke. Their remaining ships scattered, some diving into hyperspace, others drifting powerless into the dark. "Enemy retreat confirmed," the radar officer said. "The gate is secure." The bridge erupted in cheers. People clapped, hugged, cried, laughed. It was a sound the stars had not heard in a long time. The commander didn't join in at first. He looked at the screen showing the Andros gate glowing quietly in the distance. It was safe again. For now. Then he finally smiled. "We did it," he said softly. Across the fleet, celebrations began. The cooks opened emergency rations, turning them into warm meals. The medics worked tirelessly to treat the injured, but even in pain, the soldiers smiled. They knew they had done something incredible. Later that night, when the fleet was silent again, the commander recorded a message to Earth. "To all of humanity," he said slowly, his voice calm and steady. "We have faced our greatest threat and stood unbroken. We have lost much, but we have proven something that will never be forgotten. Humanity is not just a race, it's a promise. We fight when we must, we endure when others fall, and we protect what we love. The stars now know our strength, and they will remember it." He paused for a moment, then added quietly, "The enemy's destruction was immediate, but our unity, that's forever." The message was sent across the void, traveling faster than light, reaching Earth within hours. It would be replayed in homes, schools, and command centers across the world. People would cry, cheer, and feel hope again. In the deep silence of space, the fleet began its slow journey home. The ships glided together, engines glowing faintly like lanterns in the dark. The crew rested at last. Knowing they had done more than fight a war, they had protected the very future of their kind. The commander stood by the window one last time, watching the stars. The reflection of the Earth's blue glow appeared faintly in the glass, and for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt peaceful, because humanity had proven something no empire, no enemy, no distance could erase. They might be fragile, they might be few, but when they stood together, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The war was finally over. The human fleet floated in calm space, surrounded by quiet stars and the fading smoke of the last battle. Broken enemy ships drifted slowly, their lights gone, their weapons silent. What had begun as a desperate fight for survival had ended with humanity still standing. Inside the command ship, the crew worked quietly. There was no cheering this time, only quiet relief. People spoke softly, fixing systems, helping the wounded, and sending final reports. Every person on board knew that they had just witnessed something that would be remembered for centuries. The commander sat in the briefing room, staring at the large display that showed the Andros gate now safe and stable. Engineers had begun securing its structure again. Transport ships would soon come through carrying supplies, rescue teams, and scientists. Life would begin to return to the colonies that had been on the edge of destruction. The door opened and one of the senior officers stepped in, carrying a data pad. "All ships report minimal activity, sir. We've confirmed the enemy's retreat. There are no more signals in the sector." The commander nodded slowly. "Good. Let's start recovery operations. Bring in the rescue shuttles. We don't leave anyone behind." The officer smiled faintly. "Yes, sir." As the door closed, the commander leaned back in his chair. His reflection stared back from the dark glass table. Tired eyes, messy uniform, streaks of dust and dried blood. He looked nothing like the image of a proud leader, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that his people had survived. He walked down the corridor, greeting crew members as he passed. Some saluted, others just nodded with tired smiles. In the medical bay, he stopped by the wounded soldiers. Many were resting, wrapped in bandages and connected to healing machines. Even through their pain, they smiled when they saw him. "You did well," he said softly to one young technician whose arm was in a sling. "Because of people like you, Earth still stands." The technician grinned weakly. "Just doing my part, sir. I didn't want to go home without finishing what we started." The commander placed a hand on his shoulder and moved on. Each face he passed reminded him of what the fleet had truly fought for. Not power, not revenge, but life. The simple, fragile, beautiful thing that connected them all. In the hangar bay, pilots were returning from rescue missions, guiding damaged drones and escape pods back aboard. The air smelled of metal and oil, but it was filled with laughter. Mechanics teased each other, medics rushed between shuttles, and tired soldiers finally allowed themselves to breathe. One of the engineers, sitting on a crate with grease on his face, said to another, "You know what's funny? I was scared every second of that fight. But I kept thinking, if the person next to me isn't giving up, neither am I." The other engineer nodded. That's how we win. Not with bigger ships, but with bigger hearts. Their words stayed in the commander's mind as he watched them work. Later, as the fleet prepared to head back toward human space, the stars outside seemed clearer than ever. The wreckage of battle was behind them, and the promise of home was ahead. The commander stood at the large front window of the bridge, the crew around him quiet and focused. "Set course for Earth," he said calmly. The engines rumbled softly. One by one, the ships aligned their trajectories. The glow of blue thrusters painted the darkness with light, and slowly, the fleet began its journey home. Days passed in travel. Between routine work and repairs, the crew found moments to rest and remember. In the mess halls, they shared stories of near misses and miracles, of bravery and loss. One crew member told how she had guided a fighter through a storm of enemy fire to protect a damaged transport ship. Another spoke of how his team repaired a shield generator in total darkness while under attack. Each story carried laughter, sorrow, and pride. At night, when the artificial lights dimmed, people gathered near the observation decks. They watched the stars drift by and wondered what awaited them on Earth. Some had families they hadn't seen in years. Others had no one waiting, but they still longed to see the blue glow of home again. For the commander, sleep came rarely. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of battle, the light of explosions, the cries of his crew, the silence that followed. But he also remembered the courage he had seen in those same moments, people refusing to run, holding the line even when the odds seemed impossible. He spent long hours writing reports and letters to the families of those who didn't make it back. Each message was personal, honest, and filled with respect. He wrote not as a commander, but as a human who understood what sacrifice really meant. When the fleet finally neared the edge of Earth's solar system, the sight took everyone's breath away. The planet shone like a jewel, blue, green, white, a living world untouched by the war's destruction. Cheers filled every ship as transmissions came in from Earth Command. "Welcome home, heroes," the message said. "The entire planet stands in your honor." The commander smiled faintly. He wasn't the type to care about ceremonies or medals, but the thought of billions of people safe and free made every loss worth it. As the fleet entered orbit, the ships aligned in perfect formation. Their hulls, marked by battle scars, glowed in the sunlight. From the surface below, people looked up and saw streaks of light across the sky, the returning guardians of Earth. Broadcasts went out across the world. Families cried as they saw loved ones alive. Children waved flags. In cities and small towns alike, people gathered to watch the fleet return. It wasn't just a victory celebration. It was a reminder that unity had saved them all. A week later, a ceremony was held at the main orbital station. The commanders of every ship stood together as Earth's leaders spoke. "The galaxy knows now," the head of the council said. "Humanity may be small compared to the vast empires of the stars, but when united, we are unstoppable. We fight only when we must, and when we do, our resolve is unbreakable." Applause echoed across the hall, but the commander's mind wandered. He looked out through the glass wall of the station, past the stars to where the war had been fought. Somewhere out there, the remains of enemy ships still floated in silence, a warning to anyone who might think of threatening humanity again. But he didn't feel hatred, only peace, because deep down he knew humanity didn't fight for destruction. They fought for the right to live, to grow, to dream freely under the stars. Later that night, back aboard his ship, he walked through the quiet corridors one last time. The walls still carried the faint smell of smoke and metal. The crew had mostly disembarked for rest and celebration, but some stayed behind to finish repairs. He thanked each one personally. In the observation deck, he stopped to look out at Earth. The clouds swirled gently across its surface, and the lights of cities sparkled like constellations of their own. He thought about how fragile that planet looked. So small, yet it had produced people capable of facing entire armadas and surviving. He whispered to himself, "We didn't just win a battle. We proved who we are." A faint sound came from behind him. One of the young communication officers had entered quietly. "Sir," she said softly, "the final message from Earth Command just arrived. They want to know what the fleet's new directive should be." He smiled and turned to her. "Tell them our directive is simple. We rebuild. We help every colony we can. We make sure no one ever has to fight like this again." She nodded and left to relay the message. The commander turned back to the window. The reflection of the blue planet filled his eyes. He knew peace wouldn't last forever. There would always be challenges, new dangers, new unknowns waiting in the dark. But for now, humanity had earned its moment of peace. As the ship drifted in orbit, the stars around it shimmered quietly. Somewhere deep within the hull, the engines hummed like a heartbeat. The fleet that had faced impossible odds now stood as a symbol of what unity could do. And across the galaxy, whispers spread among alien worlds. They spoke of the humans, not as destroyers, but as survivors. Beings who had turned fear into strength and strength into hope. From that day on, no one dared to underestimate Earth again. The message was clear to all who watched from afar. Humanity fought only to protect. But when forced to rise, their response was swift, their power absolute. As the stars faded into dawn over Earth, the commander finally allowed himself to rest. The long war was behind them. The future waited ahead, and in that moment, as sunlight touched the ships of the returning fleet, it was clear that this was not just the end of a story. It was the beginning of a new chapter for all of humankind. Because when the human fleet had entered the combat zone, their enemies had seen destruction. But what truly arrived was something far stronger, the unbreakable spirit of humanity.